Have you ever wanted to make a moving platform in Fortnite? Before UEFN launched, you would do this by using the prop mover, but with UEFN you can use the power of the cinematic sequence device to make fully custom animations. And not just for moving platforms either, but full-fledged animations that can serve whatever purpose you like. Today I'll be going over how to make animations like these to add life and new gameplay elements to your Fortnite creations. Okay, so we're here in the editor. The first thing that we'll need is something to animate, so let's go ahead and make something to animate. Just for this first one, I'm going to do something real simple. We're going to do a sphere. There's a couple of settings that we'll need to change in the editor before we do anything else. Firstly, we're going to go ahead and turn off this Use Auto Nav Mesh Flags. Turn that off. And then we're going to make sure that this Can Ever Affect Navigation is also unchecked. For a small prop like this, it's probably not going to make that much of a difference, but for bigger props, you'll definitely get a performance hit if you leave those on, so you want to make sure that those are turned off. We also want to make sure that collision presets on our mesh is actually set to Fort Dynamic Mesh, just to make sure that we're kind of playing by Fortnite's rules as far as what it's expecting to happen. Because if we do the static mesh, if you hover over it, it says used for static meshes that never move and cannot be interacted with. That's not what we're going for. We're going for used for meshes that can move but need to be interactive and shootable. I find that this works pretty well. The next thing that we need to do in order to make this work is create a sequence. So a sequence is basically a timeline which you can use to animate. And in order to do that, we're going to go ahead and go right-click in the main folder here, go to Cinematics, and then go to Level Sequence. So now that we have that, we actually need the sequence device provided by Fortnite. So go to Fortnite, Devices, and it is called Cinema Sequence Device. I'm going to go ahead and drop that in here. On the right here, we have our configuration options. We're going to go ahead and select the sequence that we just made. For this one, we're going to go ahead and hit loop playback because I want this to be playing all the time. We're not going to turn restore state on. We are going to turn autoplay on, and we're going to make it so that autoplay happens when the game is in progress. So that means when the players are actually playing. The next step that we need to do is open up the actual sequence. So in order to do that, you can double-click on the sequence icon here. That'll pull up the sequencer, which is your timeline for animations. The first thing that we need to do in this interface is select our sphere here. We're going to go ahead and hit plus track, actor to sequencer, add sphere. So now we have our sphere actor on the timeline here, and we can manipulate it as we see fit. So it's important when you're working with the sequencer that the start of your animation is at 0, just so you don't get any unexpected behavior. So just make sure that the little playhead here, you can drag it all around, make sure that is set to 0. Exactly 0. Another way you could do it too is down here in these controls. You can go to the end, go to the beginning, pretty easily. So now that we have our sphere on the timeline here, and now that we're at 0, we could start adding keyframes. Now, if you're familiar with animations, you know what keyframes are. If you're not, I'll go ahead and explain it right now. What a keyframe is essentially a snapshot of the given property at that time. So we're going to go ahead and under sphere, transform, location. So this is where it is in 3D space. Z is our up-down axis. That's this axis here. We're just going to make this sphere gently hover. So in order to do that, we're going to go ahead and keyframe our initial position. We have now taken a snapshot of this sphere at that location at this period of time, frame 0. I'm going to go to the middle, which I think is around 75. It's not an exact science. You don't have to be super precise when you're animating. You can kind of just, you can cut loose a little bit and animate. We're going to make sure that this is on. So what this is going to do, this is going to create a key whenever any property changes. So that just makes it so that we don't have to go back and like hit this little key button every time. So for example, if I move this down right now, I'm going to go down. And now we've made a key there. And you can see now, we scrub through the timeline. Our position is changing over this given period of time. Now, I want the sphere to go back up exactly where we left it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit end to end here. I'm actually going to copy the first keyframe that I made. And then I'm going to paste it using Control V at the end of the timeline. So now, if we play this on a loop, and you can change whether or not the preview is going to loop with this little button here. 2 little arrows mean it's looping. So on this little loop, we're going to go ahead and hit play. And you can see our sphere is nice and hovery and floaty, and it's all good. So we're going to check this out in-game now. Whenever you make a change to an animation, you're going to have to push the changes to the editor itself to see how they look in-game. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. All right, so we're in-game. We can see here our sphere got added. We have the cinematic sequence device added. Our sphere isn't moving right now. Now, the reason for that is because we're actually not in-game yet. We told our cinematic sequence device to only autoplay when the game is in progress. So we won't see any action until we actually start the game. So if we do that real quick, take a look over at our sphere. We can see that it is nice and hovering up and down. Now, this is a very basic example. Let's take a look at something a little bit more complicated next. Alrighty, for the next step of the process here, I want to make it an elevator, but I want to make it an elevator that rotates as it ascends and descends. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to have to change a couple of properties on this. We're going to have to, one, make it go up and down, as elevators do, but also have it rotate while it does that. So the first step, like before, is we're going to go ahead and hit plus, add track. We're going to add our box to the track here. And we're going to skip to the beginning. Make sure you're always at the beginning. Oh, and you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to uncheck the navigation stuff and set my mesh to a dynamic mesh. Port dynamic mesh. So now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead and start the animation process here. So the first thing that needs to change is its location. And just like the sphere, we're going to make the location go up. So we've keyframed the initial position. And we'll just have this be a nice, smooth transition. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make this go up like that. But then we also want to have it come down too. So I'll... but I don't necessarily want that to happen super fast. If we had it just in this time frame to frame 150, that's going to happen kind of fast. So let's say I want to increase the length of animation time. That is something that we can do by moving the playhead to where we want it to go. So I'm going to double it. I'm going to go to 300. And I'm going to hit this button here, which is set playback end to current position. So now that I've done that, we now have this entire space to work with. It's the green space to the green line to the red line. That's our whole timeline that we got going on. So that being said, I am going to go to the end here. And just like with the sphere, I'm going to go ahead and copy this first keyframe and paste that at the end. So now if we play that animation, we see the platform goes up and the platform goes down. All right, so that's the up-down portion of our elevator. We got that squared away. So what we're going to do now is we need to make the elevator rotate at the same time. Now, in order to do that, we're going to set our playhead to the beginning. We're going to go to the front. We are going to go ahead and under rotation, the value we're looking for here is yaw. And if you're ever confused about what value you need, you can actually edit the properties right here to test it out. Right in this little space here. So we could see pitch, not really what we're going for. Roll, also not what we're going for. What we need it to do is to spin like that. So we're going to have our initial position here be 0. We're going to key that in. And once you make the first key, that's when you can start editing the properties and have them auto key with this little feature here. So we're going to go to 149. And if you want to skip to a specific frame, you can click this little orange number here. So we're going to go 149. Bam, we're solidly on 149. Now, at this point, I want the platform to have rotated 180 degrees. So we're going to go to our yaw property here. Go 180. And it'll look like nothing has changed, but if we look at the animation, we can see that we have a rotating platform going up. Now, I'm going to go ahead and copy the first keyframe, paste it at the end. Let's see what happens. Goes up, as you would expect. But then it goes down, and it kind of starts rotating the other way. We don't necessarily want that. What we can do in order to counteract this is go to the keyframe that we just made. So see, it's going to 0. If we set this to go to, for example, 359 at the end, right? We'll see that the rotation keeps on going through, and it doesn't do that thing where it reverses halfway through. Now, one thing you might have noticed is that the rotation is slowing down and stopping as it gets to the end before the other loop happens and it continues. If we want to stop that, what we can do is we can actually set these from the individual keyframes. By right-clicking on them, you can set them to linear. And if you do that, what'll end up happening is that it won't have any easing. So you see it just continues right on through. It doesn't, there's no speed up or slow down once it gets towards the ends there. And it looks really nice and smooth. So let's go ahead and pause that real quick. We're going to save the sequence. Always save your sequence. And then we're going to push the changes and take a look at it in game. All right, so we're back in game here, and we have our platform. Solid, very good. Let's go ahead and play it and see what we got here. There we go. Goes up, comes down. Let's see if we can take the elevator up to the top there. And you'll see that your character also rotates with the elevator. There are definitely some weird things that you want to watch out for. Anytime you make an animation that you intend to have people stand on, I would just double check that the animation is behaving as you would expect it to, and that the collision is behaving as you would expect it to. Just because things can get a little bit weird with that sort of thing. All right, we're going to try one final, a little bit more complicated example here. And we're going to try to make a custom animated door. Okay, so I've modeled a basic little blast door for an idea I had. It's nothing special, just some primitives really, and they're all lined up so that we have these like blast locks on the front, and then of course the 2 main door parts as well. I'm going to start animating. One thing to keep in mind when you do that is make sure you have everything set up with your model the way you want it to before you start animating, because as you start to animate, if you make a change to your model, it can sometimes mess things up. So as much as you can, just try to make sure that everything is all set with the model first, and then animate second. So the first thing that I'm going to have happen is I'm going to have these little blast lock things come down, and I'm going to add a little bit of a bounce to those. So let's get started on that. Go ahead and grab my cool sequence. We don't need the box or the sphere to be animated anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and delete those. And now we're going to go ahead and animate the blast doors here. Now there are 2 of them. We're going to select everything, and we're just going to hit plus track, add actor to sequencer. We're going to add all 10 of them. It's going to make this kind of a mess to go through at first, but what we can do is we can actually organize these into folders. So that's what I'm going to do starting out, just so things don't get too crazy on me. I'm going to go ahead and assign these to a folder. These are going to be doors, the main doors. So I have distinct groups of girders from inside out. It's 4, 3, 2, 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that these are all grouped as such. So I'm going to go ahead and assign these to a folder. All right, I've got those all set in their folders. We're just gonna do that so that it doesn't get too crazy on us when we're trying to animate here. So within G1, we're gonna go ahead and edit the locations on both of these. We're gonna do it at the same time. Before I get too far, I'm gonna go ahead and set the total frame limit to 500. I think. Give that a go. See how that feels. Now we're going to go ahead and change the locations, the Z levels of all these individual girders. So actually, I've kind of named this counterintuitively by accident. Whoops. We're going to start with G4, because the G4 is going to be the innermost little bars I have set up here. Just going to go ahead and key, go to front. Make sure we're at exactly 0. And I'm going to go ahead and key the Z location for both of these. So they're both keyed at the beginning of the animation there. I'm going to allow 6 frames to pass. So we're skipping to 6 in our animation. It's frame 6. We're going to go ahead and move these down quite dramatically at first. It's kind of getting a little bit claustrophobic here. Always feel free to edit the workspace. Make it so that it's very nice to work in. All right. Move those down like that. 4 frames later, on frame 10, going to have these move up. We're going to go to frame 180 and set these so that they move all the way down. So let's see how that looks with our animation. You know, on that second frame, I think I'm going to have them move up just a bit, so that we have even more of a bounce. So, something that takes a little tweaking in order to make sure that you have it just the way you want it. It's not an exact science, like I said earlier. Whatever you want to do. Alright, so I'm reasonably happy with that. Goes down a little bit. Looks like it unlocks and then slowly recedes back into the ground. What we want to have happen. And I'm going to animate the rest of them the same way, just starting a little bit later, one after the other. Alright, so let's see how that animation looks with all 4 of them or all 8 of them, I guess, being animated. Go ahead and play that. Doon, 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 doon. All the locks come down. And then the last thing that we need to do is open the door. So that's relatively simple. Again, we talked about it earlier. It's rotating instead of translating up and down. So we're going to go ahead and go to our main doors. Now on this model, I've set the pivot point to be on the corners, which is helpful for doors. But again, that's something you want to make sure that you have set before you start animating, because if you try to change it halfway through, you're probably going to have to start over. So initially, what I'm going to have happen is the doors are going to crack open a little bit and then slowly open up. So let's see if we can get that animated. One thing that's really helpful if you have things happening at specific times, you can actually do math in this little window here. So if I want to go 6 frames ahead of this, I could just type 189 plus 6, and it'll take me 6 frames ahead. All right, so let's take a look and see what this animation looks like. All the way through. Locks come down, doors crack open, and then slowly open up exactly how we wanted it to be. Alright, so that's the animation part done. But how are we going to set this up now so that we can actually open it in-game? We're going to use our old friend, the cinematic sequence device again. Now, this time we're not going to have the playback loop because we don't want the door to be opening over and over and again. What we're actually going to have, and we're not going to have it autoplay either. We want this to happen at a very specific time. We want this to happen when the player presses a button or something. We're going to go ahead and save our sequence because I forgot to. Oopsie. Do as I say, not as I do. Get a button in here. Alright, so with the button in here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to have click on the cinematic sequence device. We're going to play function when we interact with the button. On interact. So now we have it set so that play function happens on a button interaction, which is this here. One important thing is that we don't want it to restore state because once the door's open, we don't want it to close again. If this was checked, then the doors would just snap shut at the end of the animation. Not something that we want to have happen. So now we just have to test to make sure that it's working as expected. We're going to go ahead and push changes, and we'll be in the game in a second. All right, we're in game here. We see our blast door over here. Let's go run over to it real quick. I'm going to go ahead and hit the button, and we'll see what happens. There it is. Locks come down. Door pops open. Slowly swings open, just like we programmed. You can actually even see it updating on the mini-map, which is kind of cool. I didn't notice that before. Then we can run right through. Oh. But we've run into a problem, you see. Even with the cinematic sequence device not restoring the state got restored anyway. Why is that? Well, we'll go ahead and take a more in-depth look. After looking through the documentation, the restore state option here does not override if the tracks in the sequencer themselves are set to restore their state after they're done playing. I'll show you how to change that. You're going to go ahead and click on a track that you want to change. In this case, we're doing Blast Door Left Transform. Right-click, go to Properties. When finished, we want to keep the state. We want to have it stay where it landed, basically, when it finished animating. So we're going to have to do that for every single one of these tracks. But that's all right. Simple enough to do. Okay, so we've changed all those so that the keep state is on at the individual tracks. We're going to go ahead and push the changes. Again, anytime you make a change to an animation, you need to push the changes in order to see them. We're going to go ahead and check that in-game in just a second here. All right, so we're back in-game. I'm going to go ahead and check this to make sure that things are working as expected. Start the game here. Run over to our Blast Door. Hit the Interact button. See all the locks go down just like before. Doors open up. Let's see if they stay that way. And there we have it. Blast doors open permanently. Now, of course, you can add another animation where the blast doors close again. I'm not going to do that here, but really, the sky's the limit with this stuff. You know, you can add all kinds of really cool animations to your levels. Pretty much anything that you can think of. Couple that with sound design, and you can get some really nice extra flair onto your island. A couple of extra things to note. The cinematic sequence device can be a bit of a memory hog, so I would use them sparingly. You know, make them count, because you spam your island full of these, it's going to fill up the memory pretty quickly. The other thing, too, if your level uses streaming and things are spatially loaded, if things are too far away when the animation starts, it can cause some issues. In order to get around that, you'll just want to go ahead and uncheck on the object being animated. You want to uncheck is spatially loaded. Those are a couple things that I've noticed when I was messing around with this stuff. That's pretty much all I got today. Leave a comment with what you'd like to see covered next, and do drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. All right, thanks. Happy mapping.